I'm sure that no 2 days are exactly the same for you in this profession, but typically what does a day in your life look like?
You are correct in that no 2 days are the same. I would say it's just a varying degree of mayhem, depending on which day, because it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses seeing clients. It encompasses filling orders. It encompasses. I also have a real estate business that I need to tend to from time to time. So each day is different. As I like to say, like New York itself is like the newspaper. It's a little bit different every day. There is no 2 days that are the same, and a new version comes out every day.
New York itself is also quite mayhemic. It's very hard to have things quiet and orderly in that city.
Very much so, very much so. But I sort of thrive on that. Well, I'm born and raised here, so for me, it's a little bit of I need it very much coursing through my veins. There's a certain energy here that obviously you don't get in a lot of places. And I have to say I'm very fortunate in that I've adapted to it very quickly from living here. And so when things start to slow down is when I'm not necessarily at my best. And New York has a very funny way of pushing you forward, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you're dead right about that. I would love to dive into your background and how it came to be that you started your own brand and everything that's emerged from that. Where did you get your start in adult life? Was it in menswear, tailoring, fashion, or was it something completely different?
It was something completely different, and I won't bore you with all the details because we would be here for 3 hours. But the long and the short of it is, I've had a real estate business for actually this year will be 30 years, and in New York, you spend a lot of time with your clients because the closing process takes so long. And so you get to know them. It's a very personal situation. You get to know their family as well as your clients, and you get very involved in their lives. And inevitably, my clients would ask me, "Oh, I love your jacket, or I love your suit, or I love your scarf, or where did you get it?" And it sort of morphed into a sort of what they now refer to as a side hustle of a styling business for my clients when they had events or they needed places to go or, events to attend and things. And then I did that for a while, and it worked. Both of them worked, and it was a labor of love. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed styling them and bringing out the best in them. And it also helped my real estate business because there's a level of trust there that you develop. And then social media came along, much to my chagrin, but it did start to take over the mainstream. And it was actually one of the young guys who worked for me said to me, "Hey, Grandpa, you're not on any kind of social media whatsoever." And I was happy about that. But I was also smart enough to listen to him in that he was very much more in the flow than I was. And he expressed to me that he felt it was going to be sort of the wave of the future on how business is done and marketing is done. And then I thought, okay, I'll try it just to sort of test the waters and at least stay current in the marketplace. And I looked at the various platforms, and Instagram was sort of the most visual. So I felt like even Monkey Boy here could kind of figure it out. And this is still true today. And I still have a problem with social media with this today. It seemed like it was very much a medium of lack, especially for young men. I felt like they were going on there and seeing everything they didn't have. So where they were watching everybody's perfect life or so-called perfect life, and they were sort of not feeling so great about themselves because they felt like they didn't have any of that, and it seemed like a million miles away for them. So I made it a point that if I'm going to do this, I would at least try to use it in a positive way and try to promote a positive message in that, to the effect of, if I can do it, anybody can do it, sort of thing. And at least make it encouraging. And that's how I started. And other than, a handful of friends and family members, I never thought in a million years it would take on the life that it did, but it did. Now, it's very different today. It's a different, I don't know that what I did would work today, but it sort of organically grew. And then one of my best friends was and still is my tailor. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, listen, every young guy in New York is coming into the shop with pictures of you on the phone, and they know that I made you this stuff. So how about you design a line and we'll sell it out of the tailor shop here?" And I was just happy that they were busy. It was a family-owned business, and it was he and his father, and they've been there for 50 years, and they're master craftsmen. And I was just happy that they were busy. But I did on a whim, and it was successful beyond our wildest dreams. And then before you know it, it's very much him pushing me into, he's a very persuasive individual. And he sort of coerced me into expanding it. And then before you knew it, we had a store, and we opened it during sort of the retail apocalypse in New York. And I thought we would be closed in, 6 months. And now it's 8 years later, and, we're still here and thankful and very fortunate.
That's incredible.
I would love to tell you it was a master plan, my friend, but it was not.
These things seldom are they? It's very rare that you speak to somebody and they say, "I had it all laid out from day one and I followed it exactly." No, it's just this weird path that always changes and evolves. And I like the fact that you said now it would be called a side hustle, because I think a lot of people, what they would be better off doing is, rather than trying to find a side hustle, just express their natural interests or go with their curiosity, and then learn. If that actually could become a business and it can make money, then that's great. But I think a lot of people today are doing it the other way around.
I agree 1,000%. I unfortunately, I think a lot of the motivation, which is what a lot of fuels social media, is fame and money seem to be the motivation. Whereas I think if you went the route of what fulfills you, or what you're passionate about, or what you're really interested in and can't get enough of, if you go down that path, I feel like you're going to be successful in not only monetary ways, but in many other ways as well. And that in turn will open up doors for things you've never even dreamed of. And I mean, quite honestly, this place and the career I've had in it is living proof of that. And that to me is everything.
I love the store that you have. It's putting my background to shame. I just moved into a new place last week, so we're a little bit we're a little bit bare still, but hopefully it will be coming along over the next few weeks.
Knowing you, my friend, you have no doubt it will be.
Hopefully, this is the
representative.
It's the first time I've had a dedicated home office, like a room where I have nothing apart from working and filming. So it's quite fun that I get to do that.
Oh, sure.
But you also realize, when you probably had this when you opened your store, you think of all the stuff that you're going to need, and then you buy it all and you put it in and you go, yeah, it still looks kind of empty. And then you go buy more stuff and you redecorate. You go, yeah, there's still something missing. Oh, I forgot curtains. I forgot this. I forgot that little thing that needs to go in the corner. It's like it never really seems to end.
It never does. And, we get a little skewed in our perception now, because now in days like this, in the times we live in, we're so used to immediate gratification, where, you hit a button and Amazon delivers to your door, and it's, you can get paper towels by the end of the day. We're so used to that fast pace that the lost art of curating something over time gets a little lost. I have that issue sometimes here in the store, in that, we make everything from scratch. It starts with a paper pattern, and we have, elderly Italian men sewing around the clock, and things take time. And it's weeks before your finished product is actually on your body.
Yeah.
And sort of, I find with the younger clients that there's a little more impatience, because they've grown up in a time where you get everything, right away. And it's the same when you curate an interior. You'll get there, and your aesthetic is very sort of precise, and you know what you like. And it's much better to wait, be patient, curate it over time, because you'll find different things that you love if you just sit back and wait for them, versus trying to get it all done just so it looks okay, and you settled for a few things just to get it done. But then over time, if you had waited, you'll be walking down the street and you'll see something in a shop window, and you're like, oh, if I had only waited another week, I would have gotten that, and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
I think that's precisely that, especially with interiors or clothing. If you're in a city that is inspiring in some way, you want to walk around the antique markets and the flea markets or the estate sales, and just be available to buy stuff when it strikes you. But, for example, like, I haven't bought any coffee cups yet, because I want some cool, little espresso cups. I don't just want to go to Amazon or Target and get the espresso cups that they have there.
Yeah. Wait till you find the perfect little cups that also complement the space, but that are more representative of you as well, and what you what you admire and what you cherish, which are, things that have a little more substance to them.
Yeah, I think talking of comparison and social media, I think for young men there is a kind of an expectation or pressure to maybe have your shit together in a materialistic sense at a very young age. Like, I think that a lot of guys didn't. You can tell me, because you were there. I don't think it was that abnormal for, a 25-year-old guy to not have a Rolex, or to not have a perfectly decorated apartment with original artwork on the wall. But I think we see that on social media, and then we expect to have the same lifestyle of somebody who's twice our age.
Oh, 100%. It's a sort of mentality where they think, oh, once I have this, then I'll have that. And that's a never-ending cycle. I had a young guy who came to work for us for a while, and we used to have heart-to-heart talks about, he was that 26-year-old kid who felt those things and had those expectations. And I was trying to sort of preach to him to be patient. And he said something to me. He said, well, that's easy for you to say, you're already there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I don't know where you think there is, but there is no there. You don't just get to a point and you say, oh, I'm good, I'm done. I've done it. It's just not human nature. You're always striving for not necessarily more and not necessarily better, but different, because you evolve and your tastes evolve, and the things that are important to you evolve. And the things that mattered to me at 25 are not the things that matter to me now. It's quite the opposite, actually. And that, I think, trying to instill that, if you can instill that to young men now and they really get it, it benefits them exponentially later in life.
What were some of those things that were very important to you when you were 25 but don't matter so much anymore?
Not sort of different than I'm sure what matters to young men, especially now, but young people in general. Just maybe not in the same quantity and thirst that they have for it now. You take a platform like Instagram, the verbiage they use is quite telling as to where we are in society, right? You want to acquire more followers. So it's basically a herd mentality. One person does something and the herd will follow. And that's very much a sort of young person mentality, to be accepted. Very determinant likes. Everybody wants to be liked. They want to be accepted. They want to fit in. As you get older, you want the opposite. You want not to fit in. You want to be unique. You want to be more authentic to yourself. You want all those things that make you unique. You know, you and I, we don't have the same thumbprint, right? Nobody does. It's unique to you. You want to focus on that. When you're younger, and I'm sure to a large degree I suffered from this too at that age, you're striving for those things that you're accepted, you're in, you're cool, you're this, you're that. And then I was fortunate in that I didn't come up in the social media age. I think if I had, it would probably be 10 times worse. But I think early on, I realized that that was a losing game. And then I just said, you know, fuck it. And then I just went into my own sort of path, and it worked out for me. And that's not the blueprint for every young guy right now, but I think focusing on what makes you unique and accepting and cherishing what makes you unique will pay dividends for you you could not even imagine.
A quick thank you to today's sponsor, Ota. Ota is one of those brands that I've been a paying customer of long before they were interested in sponsoring the show, which is why I'm so happy to bring them to you today. If you're into menswear at all, shirts, ties, cufflinks, the things that really elevate an outfit, Ota has an incredible selection of both classic designs and more modern, expressive pieces. The company was founded by two brothers down under, and I can tell you, these guys truly care about their customers and creating the best products around. They also do fast worldwide shipping. Ota is offering a discount for listeners of the Gentleman's Collective podcast. Use the code JamesLawley10 at ota.com for a 10% discount. If you are upgrading your wardrobe this year, start with one of their shirts, neckties, or cufflinks. They make a bigger difference than most people realize. So that's JamesLawley10 at ota.com for 10% off. Coming back to that individuality thing, I would say that is something that our generation of young men have lost a little bit. And maybe it is partly because of social media, because of the followers, the likes, the speed at which trends travel. I quite like this quiet, luxury, old money kind of trend that has emerged over the last few years. I think it's very stylish. But I also think there is something magical about what you saw more maybe in the 80s or 90s, where people were kind of loud with their fashion, and you have like Studio 54 in New York, and you look at Wall Street and the way that people were dressing, it was a lot more, there was a lot more volume to it, and I think there was more individuality. Is that something that you've noticed changing as well?
Oh my God, yeah. You know, I never wanted to be the old guy who always told young guys how much better it was back in the day. But I'm not going to lie. It was. The expression then, I was hanging out at Studio 54 when I was 14 years old. And what I saw just around you, within 10 feet of you, blows away anything that I see today. And there was an elevated, regardless of what your style was, they wanted to do it to the best possible level that they could achieve in that style. And that I miss that. I miss the interaction, the human interaction. Now you go to any sort of, whether it's a fine restaurant or whatever clubs are left, I don't even really know that there are, and everybody's on the phone, or they're taking pictures of their food, what they order for dinner. I don't give a shit what you're. When we met for dinner back then, you looked over the table, say, "Hey, that looks good. That looks good," and you ate it. There was no vehicle for it, obviously, but it was much more an expression of in the now and in a human way, because there was more human contact. And right now, as you mentioned, the old money look is very in. If you label something like that, to me, it's a trend. And at some point, that trend will fade. And I never wanted to be involved in whatever. I don't want to be involved. I like the look, the old money look, but all the old money look is what we were doing 30 some odd years ago as a standard. That was just the norm. That's just what, if you walked around the streets of London, the streets of New York, everybody had that standard. Now it's a look. It wasn't a look back then. It was everyday wear. I mean, that's what you did, and you tried to do it as best you could. So now that they've labeled it something, I feel like it's going to have a shelf life, and then they're going to move on to something else. I prefer timeless things, classic things, things that will look good 30, 40 years from now. I don't care what the trend is. I feel like the chasing of trends is very much doing damage to trying to develop your own style, because you're constantly changing with what you think people will like or accept.
I'd never really put the two together before, but I think that there's something connecting people's fear to dress well and to express themselves, and that fear to be more like talking to strangers, to be more expressive, to be more just animated, more in the real world. And I think the thing that probably underlines the two is just people are more afraid now. People are more timid. I'm not sure why. I mean, the world is in many ways a safer place. What do you think is going on there?
That's a really good question. I'll probably take the other side of that. And I would say that the world is a more dangerous place now than with social media, AI. Back then, you could see it coming. It was, danger, you could see it approaching. Now,
it was physical material.
Correct. Yeah. Now, trying to discern what's real, what's not, who's real, who's not. Terms like fake news, you don't know what to believe. Now there's terms like fake news and fake, it's sort of understandable why people are scared, because they're lost. My generation grew up, you came home and you turned on the news, and someone like Walter Cronkite would give you facts of what just happened in the world. Now news has turned into opinionated broadcasts. If if the news is owned by a certain corporation that leans a certain way, here in the States it's left or right, you get biased news. So I think people are scared and timid. To your point, I think that they don't know what to believe. And when they don't know what to believe, they're easily swayed in one direction or another. And that, unfortunately, it makes for a very weak timid group of people that, and to a large degree, understandably so, because they don't know what the facts are, and everything changes, month to month. It's a daunting time, and I find that more dangerous. I would say it's less safe now than it was then.
I think people are more splintered, and it's not even like they are just divided among two sides. It's as if there are 12 different sides that people are leaning into or they identify with, and there's more hostility, I think, to different types of people. Like, you don't see, like,
Yes.
I don't mean diverse in like a racial sense or like a gender, but I mean diverse styles of people. Like what you probably had in Studio 54, you've got all kinds of crazy looking people that maybe don't have that much in common, but they're all in that one place, as you say, doing their version, the best version that they can of whatever that thing is.
Right.
Whereas now you don't see any places like that. And I think social media has allowed people to become more niche, more tribalized, because you just get to see more of the things that you already like.
Right. It's an algorithm that feeds you what it thinks you're interested in. The great thing about places like Studio 54, to your point, was that it was like going to a restaurant with the biggest menu you've ever seen. There was something for everyone, and from wildly different cultures and places in the world, and yet we were all together. It was a group. We were all had a common goal, and that was to have the best time that we could have together. I didn't care, how different you were than me. That's what made you fabulous, was how different you were. Now it's sort of the complete opposite. People are very adverse to anything that looks different than them, speaks differently than they do, are interested in different things. They don't embrace it. They sort of separate themselves from it. And that's how, to your point, it becomes very tribal. Everybody stays in their group. It was sort of like in high school where, the athletes hung out with the athletes, and the music people hung out with the music people. But back then, everybody got together at some point, and we all got together. Now, I think, to your point, they stay in their own little niche, and they don't come together, and they think because they saw it on the phone, that's enough, but that's not interacting.
Yeah, that's so true. I recently moved to Austin, and I've been trying to find my places. When you move to a new city, you find like the coffee shop you want to hang out at, the bar that you want to drink at. And it's interesting. I go to these different coffee shops, and one of them, it's like everybody in here is trans. Like literally like 70% of the customers are trans. And I'm like, okay, how does that happen? Then you go to another one, and it's all like Gen Z working from home on their laptop. Then you go to another one, and it's all kind of industry people or like gig workers, more kind of bohemian types. Then there's one that's for artists. You go, where can I go to just be around a variety of people? It's like
exactly,
even something as simple as coffee has become
exactly
a tribal thing.
It's tribal. It's tribal coffee. Hey, that's a business. Tribal coffee. I love it. It's great branding. It honestly,
it works. Yeah,
that I see it all the time. I even see it in places I never thought I would see it. Places like New York. New York used to be a city for everyone. Whether you were gay, straight, you had pink hair and a bone through your nose, it didn't matter. And we all just kind of commingled. And it, it's very much like Austin now. If I go to Williamsburg, I know I'm going to see 10 hipster guys wearing beanies and $900 jeans. It's sort of like a uniform. It's that herd mentality. It's a following thing, and then they segregate themselves into clusters that, I don't know. To me, having grown up here with all the different diversity and whatever, to me it's boring. I find it really boring and really sort of it gets stale really fast. You have no opinions and style of your own. It becomes very sort of blah. And,
Yeah.
I tried that. I still get that here in New York. I'm fortunate. On my walk home from here, I can hear 15 or 20 different languages in 20 blocks. I mean, it's really, it's fun. It's interesting.
Hmm.
It's I don't know. I find it to be sort of enriching to the soul. Whereas
I agree.
in other
Yeah.
places where you know what to expect and it's the sameness of it all, it's the recipe for death for me.
I think it's possibly partly also due to the increasing cost of living in these places, and New York would
Yes.
be a hyper example of this.
Yes.
I think it's hard to be non-conformist when you need to keep this finance job so you can afford your one-bedroom apartment, and therefore you don't want to wear the wrong type of vest, otherwise you won't get the job, you know?
don't get me started on the finance bro vest, fleece vest, check shirt thing. Don't get me started on that. But
Yeah.
I agree 1,000%. It's very prohibitive now in terms of cost. It sort of weeds a lot of people out. It's very unfortunate. New York was to some degree always like that. It was always expensive to live here, but growing up here,
Sure.
nowhere near what it is today. And that's why you still had the bodegas on the corner, and there was in the mom and pop hardware store, and the bread man and the cheese lady, and it was all those things. Now, as you said, it is very different, and I do think it becomes very prohibitive in especially in a major city. London is a good example. New York, major cities around the world. It's unfortunate, but I think at some point there will be sort of a great reset. Maybe not, in the next year or two, but not that long after that. That will at some point level the playing field a little bit. And then, as they say, the tide will go out and you'll see who is swimming naked.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable if you look back in history. I think we always find it comforting to think that the way things are now is just going to continue in that direction. But obviously, that's a fallacy, isn't it?
Right.
What do you think that reset might look like?
I wish my crystal ball was that highly tuned. Unfortunately, as with all great resets, it will come with a lot of pain, which I do think the younger generation probably needs, because if you're of a certain age, you can say whatever it is, Gen X, whatever it is, you've never seen a rainy day. Whereas, let's say my parents grew up in the Depression. And as hard as that was, what it does is it firms up your priorities. What's important, who's important, things that matter. You didn't have, 25 tweed sport jackets. You had two that you cherished and used to your best ability to put out the best version of yourself. Unfortunately, I do think at some point it is going to come to, hopefully not that sort of apocalyptic kind of nature, but my guess is it will be financial. It will be sort of global reset. And in the States here, unfortunately, for better or for worse, you could argue both. We are, we are sort of the straw that stirs the global drink, right? And
Yeah.
I think it very much has to happen here before it permeates a global society. And I do think it will. I think, regardless of what your political leanings are, we have some serious fundamental problems here in the States from a structural point of view in terms of the financial stability of the states. And I think at some point that comes home to roost.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you will love the Gentleman's Digest. This is our weekly newsletter sent straight to your inbox, packed with insights and recommendations. You'll find the link to become a reader in the description. I think we're starting to see that the major cities in the US don't have the same pull that they used to. I think, 30 years ago, somebody like myself, it would have been like unquestionable that I would have been in New York. Whereas now, with the way that things are set up and with what living in New York is like, you think, well, why would I? Maybe I'll go somewhere else. So I think apart from the people that are in those traditional industries that have always been based in those cities, things are starting to spread out, which I quite like. I think it's giving people more options now. And you're seeing other cities like really thriving, like Miami or Austin, or I'm trying to think where else is like a growing place, Denver, Colorado. The playing field is starting to spread out. Whereas in the UK, where I grew up, it's still London.
Right.
Like it just completely dominates the whole country.
I totally agree with you 1,000%. And I think it's benefited not only those cities that you mentioned, but sort of the culture of those cities, in that they become more diverse. Whereas, before maybe they weren't. They were sort of the same looking people walking around, And yet, I'll take a little bit of the other side of that and say, you're 100% right. However, nothing will take the place of the experience of living in New York or living in London, even if it's not, your permanent resident, but spending a good amount of time there to get the human interaction and the culture is still something worth doing. It's leveled the playing field, and cities like New York and LA and maybe Chicago have been diluted somewhat in that, you can do a lot of what you did there by Zoom, and we can do a podcast from two different cities. But this is a good example. This podcast that we're doing right now, as much as I'm enjoying it, and I am, will never take the place of you sitting right across from me.
Yeah, that's very true.
It never will. And there is a something to that human connection that absolutely, the technology has leveled the playing field to those cities for sure. But that missing component is unfortunate.
I agree. That's actually a big reason why I moved to Austin, because a lot of my guests were either there or they were passing through all the time. And there's kind of a podcasting circuit here. So I thought, well, if I'm there, I can do these in person more. When I was in Chicago, there was nobody really there. As much as I love that city, it wasn't that scene. It's a Midwestern city. It doesn't have that kind of, doesn't gravitate those kind of people.
You have to go to where, it's a hub for you. And, Austin is a very unique city in that obviously it has an amazing music scene. And I firmly believe that any city that has an amazing, let's call it art scene, can be music, it can be art, it can be fashion, will always be a hub, because, and you can look through history, art, whether it be fashion or music or what, has always brought people together. And that's why a city like Austin can become a hub, because there are artists there, music artists, fashion and painters and all kinds, even digital artists and all kinds of things that will attract a certain energy and therefore a certain kind of person. And then that creativity spawns things in the architecture and the scene of getting together, and the restaurants and the food, and it grows. Whereas cities that don't have a lot of art of any kind, I think quite the opposite is true.
That's a good point. And I also think that it's harder to move art around than it would be business. If you look at the artist cities, like let's say Paris, that has been an artist city for hundreds of years. In the United States, a lot of our cities are younger. But if you look at, let's take music, the music cities have been like that since pretty much they came around. And if you want to make a new city a hub of art, it's very difficult to do that artificially. Like if Tesla wants to move to a new city, they open up a factory, thousands of people have to move there, businesses copy them. But you can't really convince artists, hey, this town is the new place, you should all come.
You're
No,
100%.
where are the clubs? I've never heard of that club. No, I don't want to go play that. Who's there? No, I don't think so.
You're 100% right. And that's also part of why Paris is like one of my most favorite places in the world, because they nurture it there. They take pride in nurturing artists, and any city that does that will always attract artists. Fortunately, what happens now is I think the economics sort of drive a lot of it. Artists will go to what they can afford. And that, as we were talking about earlier, has maybe leveled the playing field. A city like Denver or Austin is certainly less expensive than a city like New York or London.
Yeah, or even parts of New York and London that weren't artist districts, they become the artist districts.
Yeah, very much so. And that's why, places like Brooklyn have expanded into the levels that they have, because, if you ask, say, my parents, they sort of spent their younger years trying to get out of Brooklyn, right? Everybody wanted to get to Manhattan, whatever, now you find sort of the opposite, right? Young people want to get out of Manhattan, go to Brooklyn, whatever, because Brooklyn's huge. It has more space. It has more, sort of interesting architecture and whatever. And so the economics have kind of driven that. People have been priced out of Manhattan, which is totally understandable. But I, regardless of what drives it, I think wherever the art goes, that becomes a much more interesting city than it was prior to the art being there. But yes, you're 100% correct. It's hard to move that around. It takes much longer.
It definitely does. It takes decades, and I think you see that with Brooklyn is probably at the end of that journey now, where it's become too expensive for most artists. It's reached the end point there. Same as a lot of places in East London, or you just see those boundaries getting pushed further and further to the outskirts of the city.
Yeah, I think that's true. And then I think it can only expand so far to the outskirts before it has to move on totally, to another city, to a city like Austin, or a city that no one's ever thought of yet, for it to become a hub 10 years from now.
Yeah. Talk to me about Fashion Week in Paris. What was that your first one most recently?
Another crazy story I won't bore you with. A calamity of events took place during that. During that week. We were very fortunate, shockingly so, to be invited. But when that whole thing went down, they called us to participate in it, which was shocking to me. But during that time, actually, my father was very ill and living in Los Angeles. And I literally had to pick up and go and take care of him. And my friend Carl, who I mentioned to you before, the tailor, was here. And I didn't have the bandwidth. And I said, hey, you do whatever you want, man. I'll be back in a week. And, I let him handle it. And then when I got back, he said to me, hey, man, I said, yes, we're doing Paris Fashion Week or whatever. And this is in right around the holiday time, Christmas, New Year's. And I said, okay, when? And he said, it was in January. So he said, it's in February. And I said, okay, that doesn't give us a lot of time. And then I said, hey, wait a minute, February? And he said, yeah. I said, that's Women's Fashion Week. And he said, yeah. He said, it's funny. You're like the second person who's told me that. I said, oh, man. So I said, you signed us up for women's fashion, but we do mostly men's, right? He said, huh, that's funny. I said, yeah. So I called them and I said, hey, look, we're a menswear atelier. Maybe there was a miscommunication. And they were very generous. And they said to me, I'll tell you what we'll do. You have to put, I think it was 20 pieces down the runway or 25. So she said, do half men's, half women's. It'll, I said, oh, okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
And then we started to get everything ready, and I designed a bunch of pieces, and we were all set to go. And if you remember during this time, in I guess it was 2019, as we started to approach the date, things all over Europe started shutting down due to the pandemic. And our mills, our fabric mills, shut down because, as you remember, Italy at that time was sort of the epicenter of what was going on. And so it was 2 weeks before the show, and we couldn't get any fabric delivered. So we went into emergency mode, and we went down to the garment center here. And fortunately, the way I design is sort of backwards from what you hear most designers do, and that they come up with a piece and then they look for fabrics to put on that piece or manufacture that piece. I'm the opposite. If I see a fabric, I think to myself, that would look great as fill in the blank. So we ran down to the garment center, got 30 fabrics, and I said, okay, this is a dress, this is a jacket, this is a suit, this is a... And we brought them to our tailor shop, and the guys for 2 weeks slept in the tailor shop sewing these things to go down the runway in Paris. Literally, the last piece was done about 4 hours before we got on the plane to go to Paris.
Oh, my. Did you have your models at the time?
Good question. I had a handful of the 20 models that we had, maybe 5 that we could do fittings on. The others were all in Paris. So we couldn't do the fittings until the day or 2 days before the show. So, of course, Carl is an amazing tailor, and he could sort of eyeball their comp cards and we could sort of figure it out. But the little fine details still had to be worked out when we got there. And of course, everything was just a hair off, especially when you have OCD like I do, and everything, So we managed to find a tailor in Paris who could fix all like 15 pieces that we needed altered in one day. And the ironic part is he spoke no English whatsoever, but the universal language of tailoring saved us. Carl went in there and they pulled apart every piece of this release, raise, contract, and they knew, and how to sew. And literally hours before the show, we were running over to the Ritz in Paris with garment bags in our hands, trying to get ready for the show. And we were so fortunate, I cannot even begin to tell you, in that the artistry of those runway shows was incredible. And they, for whatever reason, they had chosen us to close the show, which was an honor.
Yeah.
But everybody who went before us was this very ethereal sort of classical music, and everything was hand beaded, and there was no way and very couture, and there was no way we could have, I don't want to say compete, but do that level of intricacy and very esoteric things. So right before the show, I said to Carl, listen, we got to lean in to what makes us us. We're not going to compete with this. So at the last minute, we changed the format and the music. And at the end of this week of ethereal shows and fantasy sort of atmosphere. The two thugs came in, and we blew the roof off that mother. We had our music people were dancing in the aisles. Things were going down a runway in bold patterns and craziness. And I will tell you, it will go down as one of the more magical moments of my life. Not because I did a runway show in Paris. We did, and it was fabulous, but that we were able to pull all that together in an authentic way to us, and that it was that successful. I never in a million years would have imagined that, but to this day, I am so grateful. And we were actually one of the last planes out of Paris at the end. I mean, we were partying all night till 4 a.m. with all the models, and it was insane. And then 2 days later, we had to get on the plane, and we were like one of the last planes out of Paris before everything shut down. And I mean, it was a you went from the highest of the high to the entire world shutting down 1 week later. It was insane, but it was by far one of the most memorable experiences of my life.
I can't even begin to imagine how amazing the atmosphere must be when that show is done, and there's the applause, and then the relief as well from your part of everything having actually worked.
Yeah, relief was a huge part of it, but also it was almost like an out of body experience. You know, at some point you sort of watched everything as it was happening, because once the show started, that was it. You know, you did the best you could, and you hope for the best. And it was truly magical. When we were talking earlier about young guys, you know, and they think once they get a Rolex, you know, that'll be aesthetic, which I totally get. But I had someone interning here for the summer, young guy, and he had asked me once, what was my most valuable watch?
Ooh,
and I said, I'm sure you're talking about monetary value. And he said, yeah, what's the most, expensive? I said, that's not value to me. And I told him that when we were in Paris, after the show, after we had recovered from the night of partying with the models, Carl and I and his wife were walking around Paris, just soaking it all in and trying to envelop what just happened to us in this magical night. As we were walking around Paris, there was a little watch store in Paris that had some of the most unique watches I had ever seen. And they were not expensive by any means. And we all got one. And I said to him on the return, this young guy who was interning for me, I said, other than my father's watch, which happens to be a Rolex, but that's not why it's valuable. It's probably the watch I bought in Paris that day, as we all did, because every time I look at that watch, I'm reminded of that night in Paris. And every time I look at my dad's watch, I'm reminded of my dad. That makes them priceless. It's not about, what I paid for them and that's where I think, in a large part, we've lost sight of today what makes something valuable. To me, like the old money look, I would rather see someone do the old money look with a cardigan sweater from their dad than something they're trying to replicate from a Ralph Lauren ad.
Yeah, I totally get that. This is not my dad's, unfortunately.
Still
although
looks good,
it could be looking at it. My dad is I didn't really inherit my love for menswear from my dad, put it that way. My dad's a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy, bless him.
Understood. If you
although he does have a couple of,
if you do it well, there's
talking
nothing
of watches,
wrong with
he does have a couple of nice watches, which I actually encouraged him to start wearing again, because he was one of the people that fell into the whole Apple Watch or like fitness device thing. And he had this beautiful Breitling that I remember him buying when he turned 50, because it was like a big deal for him to buy that watch.
Right.
And I was talking to him about it, and I said, you should just wear that watch more often. Like, what are you saving it for? And since that conversation, I noticed he started wearing it again,
Oh,
which was really
that's
nice to see,
amazing. Good for
actually.
you. Good for you. That,
Yeah,
things of significance make things much more valuable than their price tag. That
yeah.
it was a
And
big
I
deal
think
for
that's,
him to buy that watch. That's what makes
yeah.
it valuable.
Yes, and the same with your watch in Paris. It might not be financially a big deal, but the reason you were there in that store with those people,
Yeah.
that was a big deal. And I think that's difficult to get your head around as a young man in the social media age, because it doesn't matter how much you want it in that moment. It doesn't belong to you in that moment. The time is not yours yet. You have to have the patience. It has to be a symbol of achievement, and it's not something that you can just buy right now.
Right. That's exactly right. And it's not the sort of the patience of waiting for those things. You'll appreciate them much more when you do attain them. And what often happens is once you're able to afford that piece, you may not want it,
Yeah,
which sort of demarcates where you are in your life. And that can be even more valuable, is that you're not that young, thirsty dude that you were a couple of years ago. You've matured and you moved on.
yeah. I experienced that with. I've been a guitar player pretty much my whole life, and
I
when I was
envy
a
you.
teenager, I'd always lust after, the vintage Les Paul or Strat,
Right.
or maybe some crazy spiky heavy metal guitar with the Floyd Rose and all of that. Whereas now, it's a very integrated part of my life. Even if I don't play live anymore, I feel very at home picking up the guitar. But I think I'm so secure in that now that I could go and buy a Squier guitar for $400 and enjoy it just as much, because it isn't about the name on the headstock. It's just about the feeling that I get when I play it. And as long as it's good enough and it sounds good, that works for me.
100%. 100%. And it's all about what you can do with it.
Yeah,
It's at the end
exactly.
of the day, they're all just tools, and it's what you can build. What kind of house can you build with those tools?
hmm When you put a line together, whether it was your first line that you made with your tailor, or choosing those 20 to 25 runway pieces, how do you think about the balance between being, classic menswear, classic tailoring, and then trying to push the boundaries and give something interesting for people to see on a runway?
Well, I think if you try to design for people or other people, I don't think that's a recipe for success. You design for yourself and what you feel is sort of lacking in the marketplace. If you listen to somebody like Tom Ford will tell you he designed a lot of his menswear because he couldn't actually find what he was looking for, in the store. I did the same. But as we were talking about, sort of maturing in your life and your tastes change, the stuff that I designed in Paris, if we were to do that all over again today, I probably wouldn't design the same things because it's now 7 years later and I've changed. My aesthetic has changed somewhat. The way we move through the world has changed. Back then, it was very much about bold patterns, but with classic tailoring. So it was sort of a hybrid. Now, I still enjoy that every once in a while, but it wouldn't be the main focus. The main focus would be something more toned down and elegant. Would also be a very different fit. Then it was coming off a time of extremely fitted clothes, and I liked them extremely fitted. Very hugging the body. I don't think I would do that now. I think it would be
Total opposite now, isn't it?
it
Yeah.
would be not to the extent that I see a lot, but if you think of sort of that kind of '90s Armani sort of vibe,
Yeah.
that sort of elegant but loose. Think about Richard Gere and American Gigolo kind of. It's not very fitted, but it's has a grace and an elegance to it, and movement.
Yeah.
I think that would be, and that's obviously probably a product of not only me getting older, but the world moving on into a certain thing. And now you do see, now it's funny when I see some guy walking down the street in a the few that I see in a suit, and it's fitted like a scuba suit. I think to myself, well, that's what we did in 2017, 2018, 2009. It's just not, so it really sticks out. And sometimes, you roll your eyes and you're like, oh, guy, no. And so in that way, things have changed, and you try to keep up with it. But you also mature and you like different things as you get older. And, very much like your dad, when I was young, I was a jeans and t-shirt guy. And I was like that for a long time. I looked, I had long hair and I was always tan and jacked, right? And that was my thing then. I'm very much the opposite of that now, but it's just a different time in life. And so you change, your aesthetic changes, a lot of things change.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you might like to know that we also have a private members club for like-minded modern gentlemen all over the world. You'll find the link to apply in the description. I might be biased because this is kind of the era that I got into menswear is this era of a fuller cut, and I love American Gigolo, in my opinion, not a very good movie, but very stylish movie.
Very.
So people that I'm not necessarily recommending to go watch the movie, actually. Maybe just look at the photos. But that Pat Riley,
Yes.
to me, the feeling of wearing that kind of fitted clothing, it's very powerful. They called it power dressing. I think it makes a man feel confident. I also think it makes you feel relaxed. Those kind of skinny scuba suits, they're not that comfortable. And I found it quite difficult to, lounge around. Like, you would never want to sit on a plane for an extended period of time in one of those suits.
That's right.
But I've flown in my more relaxed fit suits, no problem.
Oh, of course.
Plenty of room. I got the pockets. They feel just kind of slouchy. And I think given today's time period as well, when you see a guy wearing a suit, New York might be an exception, but in most other places, you're kind of assuming that he's chosen to wear that, because there aren't many careers around left where it's required. So I think wearing a suit that has a more relaxed fit makes more sense for the environment in which a suit could be worn today. It's just more cool, to put it simply.
I agree 100%. And we could talk about how that aesthetic and bringing out the best of yourself just brings more opportunity into your life, because you're giving out a different energy. It's more confident. It attracts different things. But it's funny, you mentioned Pat Riley. So when I was growing up, it was Showtime with the Lakers, and Pat was on the sideline in those beautifully cut suits. What's ironic is he sort of was mimicking the style of his father and the time that he grew up in. If you notice sort of his aesthetic, Pat Riley, the trousers are very high-waisted, fuller cuts. The jackets may have been a little longer and a little bigger because it was the time, in the 80s and 90s. But it always sort of comes from a nucleus of certain standards that just make, especially in menswear, make men look better. Trying to educate clients that sometimes come into the store of not necessarily what they see in, certain advertisements or certain things they see on social media or whatever, and what makes them look their best. I give them like 5 principles that always make a man look better in terms of structure and not being so fitted, and maybe raising the line of the trouser and being more proportional to your body. There are certain things that are they just work on every guy, and it becomes that timeless classic look.
What are some of the things that you might have to convince certain clients of. Maybe people come in with these misconceptions of what they want, and you have to say, well, I think maybe you might want to try this instead.
I tell you, one of the biggest problems we have, which is not it's not a problem. It's just a unique.
A conversation.
It's a unique conversation. 9 out of every 10 sales that come through that door are from Instagram. And what a lot of the clients do is they screenshot the photo, unfortunately, of me. If I had to do it all over again, it would not be me, but it's me. And they put together sort of a collection, and they'll come in here and they'll say, I want this, 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 and this from your Instagram page. And the client that walks in, I'm 6 feet tall. I have a waist like a prepubescent girl and wide shoulders. That's my body type, and gray hair. And the client who came in will be like 6'4" and blonde and 27 and built like a stick. What is going to work on me and complement my coloring, my body type, my everything, is never going to work on that type of individual. But they want what they want. And so it just takes more time. What I inevitably end up doing is I give it to them and I say, well, here's the exact same jacket, the exact same. And immediately they love it. That I guess that's what I wanted. When I said, let's try what I think would look even better. And then the choice is yours. And then I put on something that complements their coloring, their complexion, their eyes, the shape of and it's an education. And then they sort of see in front of a mirror in real time why this is a nice looking outfit, but it's completely wrong for you. And that a lot of this is the education of trying to explain to them that it's my job to enhance what's great about you and minimize what might not be so great. That's my job, because this is the picture and everything else is the frame. If someone is paying more attention to the frame than the picture, I haven't done my job very well. Because then in a social setting, they're not listening to a damn thing you're saying. They're looking at your suit and the attention is off you, and then you're forgettable. But if they leave that same party after talking to you and what they took away from it was, wow, that guy looked great, I've done my job.
Yeah. I think there's a balance to strike as well between I've come across different opinions. I'd be curious to get yours. Of guy walks into a room, if everybody notices his clothes, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Some people think that a gentleman's style should be very subtle, it should be very discreet, it should be very simple. Other people think, I want to create an impression, I want to look, I want to have that presence about them.
Well, my answer to that would be words matter. So if you think about the question you just asked me, the verbiage you chose was, which is correct, and what I think people think is, they want people to notice his clothes. That's not what I want. What I want is, I want people to notice him. And there's a distinct and subtle difference there, in that if they remember his clothes, that's all that they will remember, and it's fleeting. It's very much like Instagram. They will scroll past that in a minute. Whereas if they remember him, it's a much more lasting impression. And they want to experience more of that, or they want to dissect what about him made me attracted to him, or want to know more, or why do I have a lasting impression of him? And that will make them delve deeper. And yes, it's my personal opinion that less is more. But it's very personality driven too. someone with a big personality, wearing sort of louder things, and what it's more authentic to them. And I, you don't want to diminish that. You don't want to, stifle them in any way. Someone who's more soft-spoken and reserved, maybe you do, because it's more in tune with their personality. And unless they're looking
That's
to make
very true.
a really bold change, it becomes about authenticity. It's more authentic to them, and they in turn will feel more comfortable that way. And then that spawns more confidence, a little more ease in social situations. They're not thinking about their clothes. They're not thinking about how they look. They're thinking about the other people in the room, how they interact, the moment. If you're so focused on, oh my God, is my tie straight? Is it too loud? Should I have chosen the other one? You're giving off that energy. You're giving off that, and you can be loud or you can be subtle, but if you give off that, I don't give a shit, I'm happy with who I am, you're going to succeed. It's a lock.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's a big part of style, actually, is how effortless it looks, even if it was not necessarily that effortless. But honestly, I think of a lot of my favorite outfits that I've worn, they are things that I took 3 minutes to get ready in. Now, the work really came in the years before those 3 minutes when I was developing my taste and buying things and experimenting. But once you've kind of found that lane, you can just travel with a duffel bag and a garment bag and then be good to go.
That's a really good point.
I traveled around Europe with my best friend, who I actually met through our members club, and it's kind of interesting because we both met through this shared interest in the things that I talk about on my channel, but we're pretty much like chalk and cheese, even though we're best friends. With very different worldviews, very different personalities. Right. We get on great, though. And you can tell the difference in our personalities in the way we dress, because he is like, would never wear any color shirt apart from white, no pocket square. If there's a tie, it's just a plain tie, single-breasted jacket only. I'm always wearing double-breasted. I've got like long scarves on. I'll wear linen shirts. I'll wear cowboy boots. I've got the draped fit. Mine is much more eccentric, but I think that's my personality is more like artistic, kind of creative personality.
It's more authentic to who you actually are. And then, and you're a very good example of that. You give off a certain energy of when you stop trying, when it just becomes second nature to you, you give off a much different energy, and it's sort of animalistic in that way. It's almost like a dog's sense of smell and whatever. It's just innate. People will gravitate to you or respond to you, at the very least, in a very different way.
I noticed this with women and their style as well. I think I am very interested in women's style. I pay a lot of attention to the way that women dress. And I always was interested in, I loved the kind of femme fatale archetype of lots of black and red and very glamorous. But I found that a lot of women that wear that style, there's a kind of stiffness to them. It doesn't feel as effortless. Whereas the girl that is dressed a little bit more bohemian, even if it might not be visually what I would go for, there is that kind of playful, animalistic openness, free-spiritedness, 100%. Which I find very attractive.
100%. Yeah. Growing up here in New York, I was very fortunate to be exposed to a lot of different kind of women and their sense of style and how they carried themselves. For me, I was always attracted to it wasn't necessarily the most beautiful girl in the room. It's the way she carried herself, or something she did with her hair, or the way she moved. I was hooked, because it sort of told me who she was, and that's what attracted to me. It wasn't, now everybody's so consumed with how they look, and it's very hard for young and older women alike to sort of navigate the minefields of what's going on out there right now. And I want to tell all of them, as you know, stop injecting yourself with stuff, stop altering this thing. If you're authentically you, you're going to attract everything you want. And that's true of men or women, but you know, I think it's like this weird sort of bar scene from Star Wars out there right now, and it's also sort of like this. It's terrifying, right? It's frightening. I can't believe what I see walking around, and I want to just say, "Oh, honey, you know, you had me till I saw it." I just,
I'm stealing that one.
You got it.
You know, I think the way that people date and present themselves to new partners as well has ruined that a bit, because I think especially for men, I'm working on a video about how people don't meet at work anymore. It was about 25% of new couples met at work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now it's around 9 or 10%. And you think about typically why women are genuinely attracted to men over the long term. There is a physical element, but it tends to actually be more about their character and the way they carry themselves, the way they handle responsibility, the way they deal with others. You would see that over time. And I don't know if you ever worked in an office, but I definitely had that, where you think, I wasn't really that attracted to her, but then a few months later and you spend time with them, you suddenly are. And now we are, I think it's like 60% of new couples meet on a dating app where they're just going, no, I don't like what I see.
Wow.
And that's the end of that story.
Wow. I'm sure those numbers are right. Oh God, it's a little depressing knowing that's the state of the world. I don't feel like you can truly be attracted to someone without knowing them for a bit over time and letting that sort of, letting that tree grow a little bit before you condemn it to a no or accept it as a yes. There's a physical element to it, but things change. When I was young, the physical mattered a lot more than it does now, because let's face it, at 25 I couldn't find my couch in the living room. You're lost. You're trying to find your. After a while, one of the great things about getting older, there's a lot of things that suck. Okay, like physically it sucks, right? There's things hurt and things change and things physically it's not a lot of fun. But you become an amazing editor. You are able to discern very quickly. Your bullshit meter is finely tuned. You are able to discern what matters, who matters, because you're much more conscious of time as well. And so you don't want to spend time with people you're not fond of, or people who are just okay, or doing things you don't want to do, or you can run down the list. So that ability to weed out and be able to say no. At 25, everything was a yes. Hey man, let's go out tonight. Yes.
It probably should be as well, I think.
I think it should, and I applaud it, and I think there actually should be more of it. I think you should screw up a lot in your 20s. I think you should go out of your way to screw up, because I've never learned anything from success. I've only learned anything I know by getting my ass handed to me, of really getting my ass kicked. That's how you learn, and that's how you learn to problem solve. That's how you learn to deal with adversity. That's how you learn to move on in life and move forward in life. And that's a prime breeding ground for that. But then as you get older, you learn from those, wonderful mistakes, and then you move on and apply that knowledge. And then you're at a point where the ability to say no and the ability to avoid certain minefields is priceless.
Yeah, you definitely experience that in dating and relationships. And I think I definitely experienced that more now I have my own business compared to when I had a career it was like the train tracks were laid for me, you know? So I didn't have to plot my next move as much, whereas now it's like there's a chessboard, but there are a million squares on the chessboard. You know, it can be difficult to know which one is the right one. And there are, I'm sure you have this too, there are things that you look back on and you go, you know what, I'm not saying I regret it, but I would have done things differently knowing what I know now.
Of course.
But that enables me to make better decisions going forward. And I'm sure that like that learning process has only just begun, to be honest, which is painful to think
about. The key
about.
word there is process. You know, it's a process. It takes time. You learn it. You know, I wish they handed you a blueprint, you know, at birth and say, hey, do this,
there is no, there isn't one.
You're figuring it out as you go. You know, it's a lot of happy accidents.
Yeah, I guess there is a blueprint, but people that follow it tend to not be that happy, actually. You know, if you follow the conventional path in all domains of life, people tend to find that rather unfulfilling. Like the beauty comes when you go off plan and you forge your own path.
I will tell you one of the dirty little secrets of life, my friend, is that here is a good example. The clients that I have that had the blueprint, and the clients that I have, to be honest with you, that are the most affluent. I mean, they have enormous wealth, are probably, with very few exceptions, the more miserable and unhappy clients that I have, just in life, not in what we put them in. They come here as like an escape. It's their happy place, you know. But overall, in general, in their life, it's sad to watch in its own way because, you know, they have all the means that they would ever need to. But it's a very good example of, you know, money makes your life easier in a lot of ways. It can make your life a lot easier, but it doesn't make it better or happier. And this place is a very good example. I generally find the more they have, the more miserable they are. Or if they had the blueprint, they're not terribly happy. And I do find the ones that have less and fumbled their way through it are pretty good.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I'm sure you get a very interesting insight into humans. I remember doing some style consulting, kind of organically, like how it happened for you. I was doing the YouTube and then people start asking for it. I remember going to people's houses in Chicago. These were older, wealthy guys as well. And I'm sitting there in their walk-in closet and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't have a psychology degree. This is turning into like a therapy session, you know?
That's what I say it all the time. This place is a therapist's office. And I get it because, you know, the average client will come in here and they'll spend a couple of hours here at least. And I'm getting them liquored up and they're sitting here and it becomes, you know, it's like a fortress of solitude, you know, and they feel so comfortable that they're willing to say and do things that they can't in their outside life or to their significant other or to their friends and the armor sort of comes off here and they're able to sort of relinquish their inner feelings. And I feel honored that, you know, that they feel that way and that they trust me enough to be able to talk to me about those things. But it also, to your point, it really gives you an insight into the human condition of today and just the things that people worry about or are concerned about or they don't feel they have enough of, or all their angst and all their anxiety. A, I think there's a lot more of it today, and B, they're worried about different things than they were, say, 15, 20 years ago.
I would love to, next time I'm in New York, pop by. Hopefully we can do one of these in person as well.
You have
that
VIP
would
status.
be beautiful. Oh, thank you very much.
I will roll it. If I had a red carpet, I would roll it out.
I'll take any old doormat will do.
That's about what
Thank
I have.
you.
So you're good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking with me today. I think that I'm sure a lot of people will recognize your photos on Instagram and think, I've seen this silver fox guy. I think he might be an AI. He's too handsome. Oh. But I hope that they will listen to this and really take a lot from this conversation, because I could keep going for hours.
Too, and let's hope that AI advances a lot better than what they spit out here, because it's wildly flawed. But I am truly honored that you asked me, my friend, and I think you do an incredible job, especially given your age. And it's not something I come across a lot of these days. So you are by far a breath of fresh air, my friend, and keep up the good work.